The United States Constitution is not a vague set of recommendations or pliable guidelines for how the federal government is supposed to operate. The United States Constitution is a binding legal contract between the states and the federal government. The United States of America is a republic of independent states. Each state conducts its business within the boundaries of the state, according to its own constitution, according to its own legislative and executive actions, according to its own court system. But there was, at the time of the founding, and still is, a great value in these states being united under one flag. Where the state authorities stop and where the United States needs a set of authorities is in the federal government. So the federal government was not intended to be the overseer of all things in America. The federal government was supposed to take care of things like provide a uniform military presence for threats against the United States, to enact treaties and impose tariffs and do other business with foreign nations on behalf of all of the states, to provide a uniform currency in the United States, to provide an equal platform for commerce, which does not mean to control commerce in every detail, but simply to make sure that it's on an even footing when going from state to state. There are certain things that the states can do together only through this uniform body known as the federal government. Over time, the federal government has grown larger and larger and assumed more and more powers that were never intended under the Constitution. And we don't have to wonder at the intentions of the framers and the ratifiers of the Constitution. They've written extensively about it, and there's been a great deal of study about it. The framers of the Constitution are the people who wrote it and put it together. And their intention was to provide a federal government that was strong enough to be able to do the things that it is tasked with doing, but also to have limits, and those limits are stated expressly in the Constitution. The ratifiers of the Constitution are those members of state legislative bodies who were called together to vote on whether or not to accept the Constitution, requiring at that time 9 of the 13 original states in the Union. There are methods to amend the Constitution, and in fact, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution are known as the Bill of Rights, a very important area that, again, is a contract with the nation, with the citizens of the nation, and is not something that can be maneuvered or manipulated according to the political whims of the time. The process for making amendments to the Constitution has been used many times, have safeguards on keeping the Constitutional Convention from becoming a runaway, change everything situation. We need to get the federal government back to within the parameters established by the Constitution. The powers are of Congress, the powers of the executive branch, the powers of the courts, are all clearly enumerated in the Constitution. Now, the necessary and proper clause, which is often looked at as a way to assume new titles and duties, but that's not what was intended by the clause. That was not what was understood by the ratifiers of the Constitution. As a president, I can look at the federal departments and the many sub-agencies beneath the federal departments. Some departments have as many as 30 or more subgroups within them, and see, one, do these fall into the enumerated powers of that the Constitution is given to Congress? If they don't, then these areas can be eliminated. Some people say, well, this would cause a great upheaval in areas. Doesn't mean, by eliminating them, it doesn't mean that there can't be some transitory period and a plan for moving these authorities back to the states where they belong, but they are not part of the federal government. The United States federal government was never intended to solve every problem, to answer every call for action, to be the only source of change in America. A lot of this falls to the public itself. There are organizations, community organizations, faith organizations, places within departments, within business and industry that can and do address certain problems that come up in society and culture. It's up to the people of the United States to find ways to solve these problems without making it a government business. Government is not very good at taking care of business. Government is not very good at solving social ills when it tries to do that. But most importantly, government isn't intended to do those things, and they cost us billions, if not trillions of dollars every year that should not be borne by the taxpayers. There are other solutions to problems. Social problems need to be solved socially. Cultural problems need to be solved culturally. And many, many aspects of life in each state need to be solved by the states. So when I get into office, the first thing I will assign to a group of workers at the White House is to look for all of the parts of the federal government that do not fall under the enumerated powers of the federal government, and then we will work out a plan to move those powers and duties to where they need to be moved. I know how to find the root cause of problems. Many problems that the government is asked to address or that it tries to address are treating symptoms and not getting to the root cause. I know how to make change, to establish change, and to establish it in a way where that change can be maintained. So follow me at Conaway for Prez, CONAWAY, numeral 4, PREZ.com, to find out more in detail about the specifics of how I intend to take on these unconstitutional powers and extreme expenditures of the United States federal government. I'm Tim Conaway. I'm running for President of the United States. Thanks for listening, and keep it up.